from Linessa Farms Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining us again today. So today we have Chris and Erin Crider with us, and we are going to talk about business. We're going to talk a little bit about sheep, and we're going to talk a lot about business. I know Chris and Erin, a lot of our viewers, and mainly the reason I wanted to talk with you is because we talk a lot about sheep, we talk a lot about goats, we talk a lot about taking care of them, but a lot of our viewers that follow us are really looking to get into some kind of business. And a lot of them are, getting into this because they have aspirations of getting some kind of profit later on down the road, be it through selling to family and friends, or maybe doing something a little bit bigger, farmers markets and things like that. And I know you guys are doing that, and you're doing well at that. And so I wanted to take some time to sit down with you and just kind of pick your brain and see if there was anything that you would possibly have to offer our viewers, especially for those that are getting started, to kind of help them out. So why don't you guys, I guess the best place to start is to give us a little bit of background about yourselves and about the farm. Chris, I know you are a multi-generational farmer. You and I met years ago, probably almost a decade ago now, buying Columbia. Yeah. I bought a Columbia Ram off of you. So tell us a little bit about the legacy. Yeah, I bought a Ram and a ewe, I think. And I still have the ewe, as a matter of fact.
Really?
Really, yes. Yeah, she's done well for us. So so give us a little bit of background about yourself and about your farm.
Yeah. So we're Chris and Erin Crider. We are located at Farmer City, Illinois. We both grew up in FFA and 4-H, and we're involved in livestock. Of course, I met you a long time ago, and I've always done sheep and cattle, and my wife grew up doing pigs. She also had some cattle too, and always have had the sheep. My mom and dad had sheep both growing up, so it's just kind of a fact of life when you get into a generational farm kind of a deal.
Sure.
And, go ahead.
No, it's okay.
And so kind of going through college, getting out of the show world, we kind of lost ways with the sheep, and they're just kind of there. And more recently, got married to my wife in 2016, and we both had jobs, and we increased the numbers and had over 100 ewes that we were lambing out, and found that was overly challenging, working 2 full-time jobs and running that many sheep. And then we scaled back, and then we had 2 kids. And we have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And with daycare costs the way they are, my wife made the decision to stay home full-time. And so she got the idea of gearing it back up. And so we thought, instead of just raising just purely a commercial kind of deal, we would do the farmers markets. We've always sold lamb word of mouth and done well at it. Sure. Because we have a nice ethnic population and just a good following of people. But with her being at home full-time, it kind of made sense. And she does a handful of farmers markets. I can't take any of the credit because she does all the work.
Right.
And,
right.
And so it's kind of been a nice little supplement to our farm income, and it's made it work. And we went and expanded, and we went and added 50 ewes here this summer. And so that brings us up to, 75 or 80 ewes right now, which for Central Illinois, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, and Erin, I'll kind of get your take on this. A lot of people associate, I'm the face. My wife does not enjoy, it's like pulling teeth to get her to do YouTube videos and things. So a lot of people associate me with our farm, but the reality is my wife, Jocelyn, does so much stuff behind the scenes, as far as the books, all the medical records, all the behind the scenes stuff that people, I think, they take for granted. Usually if I have a question, she's the one that knows. So I'll be like, hey, what's this animal or what's that animal? Or she's yelling at me like, I know you spent money. What did you spend money on? So there's a ton of work that goes into it. And, my wife and I both work in healthcare. We were very fortunate about a year and a half ago, Jocelyn was able to start working from home. And it has made a huge difference, especially with the stress of lambing. And you guys know, 10% of your ewes are going to be 90% of your problems. And trying to get out there in the morning, pull a baby, or if you got a bottle baby or something going on, it is nerve-wracking when you're both trying to leave and work out schedule. So Erin, so you got the kids, so that's full time, and then you've got the farm. With the number of ewes that you guys have, about how many hours a week would you say that you spend, if you had to average, on the farm? About where do you think you're at?
Probably 15 hours a week, 20 hours a week, just doing normal stuff.
Right.
I like to do it. Like, I usually get way early, even before the kids are up, and I'm out there a couple hours before they're even up. And then I try to get some things done during nap time for a couple hours. And then, so
yeah, usually chores in the morning, and then go out and check them a couple times a day. And then I usually
and we've kind of evolved into that as well. So my wife did not grow up in agriculture, did not grow up in farming, but with healthcare background, she was at least a little bit more, as far as giving shots and doing things like that. Like, she completely knew what she was doing. So, but now it's funny how roles shift, because now I'm getting lazier. I can feel myself getting lazier. So she gets up in the morning and she goes out and she walks the stalls and she does things. And I'm always amazed at, like, it seems like every season, every lambing season, every fall, she's doing a little bit more and a little bit more. And she probably has more of a feel for what's going on than I do. And I think that's to be expected when you're the one that's walking the pasture, you're the one that's walking the pens, you really know what's going on. You get to know those animals. And as you guys know, and we've talked about this a lot on our channel, is, a sick goat or a sick sheep is going to cause you a lot of problems. And a lot of times it's having that familiarity with that animal, and you walk out there and you're like, you're not acting right. And you've got to act quick, or you guys know what happens, right?
Yes.
So
yes, I've learned through being in charge now. I'm getting a little more like independent, because I count on him to do a lot of it, and so now I'm getting more used to doing more things on my own, like doing the round bales by myself and doing all the feeding. So that has helped me doing a lot more and not need him as much.
Right. And so tell us, I guess, Chris, when we last really touched base with each other, you were in Columbia's. And I know you had started to transition into some Ile-de-France, and then where are we now? Like, how has that progressed?
We're one of those people that can't make up our mind.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of everything on our farm. We have a couple of Columbias. He hasn't got rid of them fully, but he has a couple left.
We've done a lot of trial and error. We're trying to, always have tried to find what works for us best. And with a lot of our customers, we kind of tried to find out what they liked best. And you can definitely tell when you're processing these lambs, which ones are working the best for you at all. Growing up 4-H, I showed Columbias all the time, and I love them. And they're still great sheep. It's hard to sell them because they get so big. They take a lot of feed, and I don't want to bash them or anything. I still like them. They aren't the right fit for us right now. And so we bought Ile-de-France's because of the prolificacy, and they're a little bit meatier. And we have a handful of those. Yeah. And then we also had bought a group of polypays that had some Ile-de-France kind of crosses them. And those worked really well for us. I mean, that's been the bulk of our flock probably for the last 5-6 years. And so they were getting pretty old. And that was another reason why we went and bought a new group, which is all polypay crosses, but very similar to the Ile-de-France. And then we're throwing a little twist in there. I seen your discussion with Erin Jennings last night, but we're throwing Dorper bucks on them. And so we're keeping them in that 100 to 115 pound carcass weight. And with our shearer retiring, we're kind of playing with the idea of hair sheep. And so I like how the Dorpers look. They're super meaty, super muscular. And we've tried it with a few of our customers, and they really like the lamb. And so we are going to use Dorper bucks on the polypay ewes. And I think we're going to go that way where we keep polypay ewes and then just use Dorper bucks, and we're going to buy our replacements instead of raising because of space.
So when you look at the I want to do two things. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about polypays, because I know a lot of our viewers may not fully appreciate what a polypay is and what a polypay can do for your farm and for your flock, and especially in the industry where you're selling meat, because I think out of season breeding, prolificacy and things like that are definitely something you have to make amends with if you're going to be selling all year round. And then I want to also talk about feed conversion ratio and what notable changes you've seen with adding Dorper into your flock. So Erin, you're in charge of making sure we stay on track. So Chris, Erin, tell me about polypays, what you like about them, and why they're a good fit for your operation.
You want to start? I think one is the mothering ability.
Yeah.
I just think they have superior mothering ability. Obviously, I think your viewers probably know, polypay is a four-way cross of a Finn Dorset and then a Rambouillet Tarhee. So they've got the ruggedness of the Tarhee, the prolificacy of the Finn, the mothering of the Dorset, and then the wool for the Rambouillet, and maybe some frame size there. But they're just a good all-around sheep that you can just cross with about anything. And so that's one reason why we went to them. And for the most part, they're pretty docile and responsive. They're not, we've had market lambs in the past, and they're super flighty. And we had a big group of blackface sheep. And let me tell you, lambing them that first year, I need big gates for those guys and gals. Yeah. So and we noticed that we noticed that switching from, we had a lot of pulled Dorsets for years. We liked a lot about them, and there's always this pressure in our area, especially if you want to sell any show stock. There's always this pressure to bring in some blackface, because that's just where it's at. People will just want a blackface. But the shift of dealing with blackface, as you said, for us was a real eye opener. The aggression, just the handling, the flightiness, and I brought in 2 white Dorpers this year from West Texas, and I will be honest with you, I have never had females that aggressive before. These were I've never had a female attempt to charge me before, and one of them tried to take me out. So it's been quite a learning experience. Now, with that being said, these were range ewes that had spent about 5 minutes of their lives around people, and I think that has something to do with it. But kind of getting back on track as far as the polypays are concerned. So if you start breeding these Dorpers into your flock, are you at all concerned about breeding out of season and losing some of that, or how are you going to try to manage that? Well, right now we're kind of just breeding one and lambing one time. I think a future goal is to lamb, over several months or out of season as well. For just easiness sake, we're probably going to have in the past, we always had tried to make lambing really, really tight and be done in like 30 to 45 days. That can be really killer on you when you got a big group. So this year we're going to spread it out over about 3 or 4 months, and we're just doing, each groups of 20 or 25 and spread it out. And then probably next year, the following year, we'll add a fall group to spread it out.
Okay. So Erin, we get a lot of customers that say, well, I want to get into sheep, or I want to get into goats. They have no experience at all, and they also want to sell. Do you think, and I know you had some experience before with other livestock, but what would you recommend to someone that's looking at getting started in this? Would you say, take a few years and get used to raising these animals first, focus on that, and then move into, or do you think it's okay just to jump right into it with both feet, or what's kind of your thoughts on that?
So I've never had sheep, and sheep's totally different than pigs. So it's like pigs, we never had like a whole lot. And so sheep, if you're just getting into it, it kind of depends on like what you have for like space wise and pasture wise. And so you really want to think about what you have to like how much do you have pasture to put your animals on and feed your animals. We actually had someone come here to kind of like ask questions, because he was looking at getting into sheep, and so it might be good to just get a couple just to see like how they're eating, and then like kind of grow upon that. But you might have another.
Yeah. I mean, for somebody who's just starting out, I say start small. Don't. We went from 30 head to 130 there when we both had full-time jobs. I would strongly suggest against that.
Yeah.
Right. And we talked about that last night when I was interviewing Erin, and I think we're all kind of, any of us that have done this are kind of on the same page. When people come to me and they say, I want to get into sheep, or I want to get into goats. I think I'm going to get 20. I'm like, no, you don't want to do that. I tell them get 2, maybe get a male, breed them, go through the process, learn the process, and then go from there. Now, to a certain degree, and I'll kind of get your take on this, to a certain degree, I think it's like, okay, is there really that big of a difference between 10 and 20? Is there really that, you know what I mean? It's like, once you get so big, it's like, well, might as well add a few more, So with that being said, culling, some people, I find culling works one of two ways. Some people are really, really good at culling, and some people are really, really bad at culling. And it seems like emotion gets involved in some cases where you're like, well, I really like them. You get an emotional attachment to some of these animals, or to a breed. You can get emotionally attached to a breed, and it makes it hard to progress. How do you guys tackle the problem of culling? I'm going to say it's a problem just because I have a hard time with it. I have had to almost do like a blind records only cull. Me and my wife will sit down and I'll just look at the records, and I'm like, don't tell me who it is. Just tell me what they do, and then she tells me the name, and I'm like, I don't, so how does culling go at your house, and how do you guys deal with it? And what time of the year are you culling?
All year round.
Yeah, we usually call year round. It's usually not so difficult with me as it is with him. But I like to start off like the jumpers, and the crazy ones are like the top of the list. Like jumpers have to go for me. Right. And then and then we go on records.
After you get rid of the crazies, and you go back to the book and be like, how many lambs did this mom raise? Did she do a good job? Or how's really that bag on that ewe look? Because we were running into why we got more sheep is because the older ewes, they're starting to age, starting to fall apart, for lack of better words. And that's kind of, so first you get rid of the crazies, and then second,
then we
go
look
back
on
to the
if
numbers.
they were good mothers. If they're not very good mothers, and they be I'm trying to keep them in one more year, and then they're bad mothers again, and then they go.
Especially if they're like a ewe lamb, we'll give them twice, just because sometimes they just don't get it the first year.
Yeah, and I think we do that as well. We cut them a little bit of slack that first year. And what I've found is that the better job you're doing, the more years that go by, it gets harder and harder and harder to cull, because you're like, okay, I've eliminated bad feet, I've eliminated bad bites, I've eliminated, you every year, every time you cull, you're eliminating problems. So, for people that are starting off, I think a lot of times it's easy. It's like, oh yeah, this one's garbage and they're not working. But then you get down to it and you're like, crap, I've got all these ewe lambs that, you've got a bunch of good ewe lambs, you've got a bunch of good ewes. You don't know what your ewe lambs are going to do yet, because they haven't frankly done it yet. And so it's like, do I roll the dice? Do I keep them? And it can get out of hand pretty quick, So it's a struggle. I think that a lot of people deal with. You had mentioned wool and shearing, and we're fortunate. We've got a shearer that comes out to our farm from Vermont, and he shears for us twice a year. But boy, it is getting harder and harder. And I look at this young man that shears for us, and I think, man, how long is this going to last? And he has an extremely good work ethic. I don't mean anything negative about it, but it scares me to death that, it's hard on you. It's hard on your body. And I sure as heck don't want to do it. I can do it, as I'm sure you guys can too, but I prefer not to. So when you breed Dorper into wool sheep, for our viewers that don't know, how many generations does it take to really get that wool out of them?
It probably takes 2, 3, 4 generations. I mean, you're going to get a lot of hair in the fleece the first couple generations, where it's half and half. And honestly, I think one of the reasons we decided to do that is because wool's worth nothing. I mean, best price I can get is 5 cents a pound. It doesn't even make sense to raise it. So we don't necessarily throw ours away, but we'll use it we'll mix it in with the manure, or we'll mix it into our garden and use it as an aggregate. That's right. And then we'll get some ladies that will ask for fleeces. So like I'll try to find like 3 or 4 nice fleeces out of the flock of the ones that are not hair, and just keep those back.
So completely shifting gears now, I do agree with you with the wool. We're the same way. It's worthless to us. I use it to insulate the barn. I use it for the garden. I use it for anything I can other than putting it in my car and paying, $5 a gallon to drive it somewhere. Like, that's not happening. So completely shifting gears, the business side of things. So we have an individual, let's say, that has they've been raising sheep or they've been raising goats, and they feel like they're doing good and they want to start selling. Where do they need to start? What do they need to know? Where do they need to start?
So the first step is to get a broker license.
So I guess let's take one step back. I think you need to kind of first talk about what your expectations are of how much you're going to sell and how active you're going to be. Because I think we learned this year is we've always been behind on having enough product at every farmer's market because we vastly underestimated the interest in lamb. So I think that's the first part. And then going into the second part, you just got to follow through. And in Illinois, you got to have a meat broker's license. And then you have health department rules depending on your county and what farmer's market you go to.
How do you get the license?
And the meat broker license in Illinois is required to sell, and we had to do that through the Department of Ag.
So walk me through that as someone that doesn't really, to be honest with you, I do not sell. I have one customer that comes to my farm. That's a friend of mine that I've dealt with for years. And the rest of mine go to the sale barn because, to be honest with you, I got tired of dealing with the customers. And I just said, it was getting to the point that, I would say to myself, I'm like, I can't sell it to you for less than I can get at the sale barn. That makes no sense to me. Just to find the time to deal with customers. So I have one individual I deal with. So for me, I don't know anything about the meat broker's license and stuff like that. Is it a bureaucratic nightmare doing this? Is it very user friendly or not too bad?
It was actually pretty easy.
Yeah, basically
You
it
just
was,
get contact somebody.
the original reason we got the license was because I had been approached about a grocery store had asked me to put lamb in, and that eventually fell through. But to be able to sell and do the grocery store, you had to have the meat broker license. And that's basically going to the Department of Ag, filling out a form, saying an estimate of how much you think you're going to sell. And then it was, basically all your information of where you're at and what you're expecting to do. And then they sent somebody out and just did an interview with us. They talked about, how are you going to store your meat, what you're going to store it in, what your expectations were. And, they talked about, making sure it's frozen at proper temperatures and food handling stuff is what they talked about in the interview. And they really haven't followed up much after that. I think I've gotten maybe one phone call in 4 or 5 years that we've had the license.
But we renew it every year.
Yep. And then on the farmers market, we just do I think the counties for the farmers market season, they have a special application. We're lucky enough, our farmers market in Bloomington, Illinois is advanced enough and big enough. They basically had all the forms for us, and they got it to us. We sent it into the health department, and they signed off on it with a fee, and we were ready to go within a week.
So people need to contact their state and local government and find out what is required. More than likely, I think most states require some kind of meat broker's license, something of that. And then people are opening themselves up to inspection, I would assume, if they wanted to come out and inspect and make sure that you're storing it properly. They can do that.
Yeah, one thing that I remember that, Illinois was a little quirky, like, what was your predator protection around the freezer? So like you couldn't have open bait. You could only have stickies around it, which was kind of odd, but that was one of their requirements in the license when they came out to interview us.
So something that comes to mind that I had never thought of before, do you insure yourself in case you sell meat to someone and it's bad and they decide they're going to sue you? I know I carry a pretty significant policy on my farm because anything can happen. One of my sheep gets out in the road and causes an accident. I need to be covered. Is there something else you need to do when you start selling meat?
Well, that was a requirement for the Bloomington farmers market and to have having
umbrella policy.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would, if somebody's serious about selling, talk to your insurance agent, talk to the farmers market that you're going to, because I would strongly suggest that, some kind of a minimum liability. Now we also grain farm, so ours is like, $2 or $3 million umbrella altogether. So hopefully we never have anything that drastic, but if you've ever been sued, that money goes pretty fast.
Right. Yeah. Working in healthcare and then having the farm, I completely can appreciate that. So, dealing with, customers year round. So your farmer's market, is your farmer's market year round or is it a seasonal farmer's market?
So it's seasonal, but the, with the one, that we go every Saturday, it's May through October, and so and then they do also have a winter market once a month in the winter time, an indoor one.
And we haven't.
So does this license allow people to sell off of their property, or is that something completely different? So can you guys legally sell right off your property to someone?
Yes. Yeah. So we can sell through a store, we can sell through the farmer's market, or sell off of our property.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about slaughter and slaughter rules. Does the animal have to be, can you, and you guys deal with this, surely you deal with this, halal, kosher, things like that. You're going to have people that come to your property and say, hey, I need, for whatever reason, I need to kill my animal here due to religious preferences or whatever. Now, I caution people with this and I say, no, that's not true. There are slaughterhouses they can take it to that are halal or kosher, and they may not want to pay for that, but they don't have to kill it on your property. That's a whole nother can of worms, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We used, so I will say, we used to do that where they could kill on the farm, but then we learned that it was illegal. So we quit that. And so, and part of the license is you can't do that. Yeah. That was very strongly mentioned multiple times. And so we've made sure that we don't do that anymore. And yes, there are places custom, as you mentioned, that you can take them and kill them. But mostly now we only offer lambs that have to be taken to the locker plant to be processed, or we'll offer individual packaged products.
So as you guys know, and it has gotten better, but especially when COVID first kicked off, getting slots at for animals was just unbelievably difficult. Everybody was struggling with getting slots within reason. I know we were having a hard time getting animals in. A lot of our co-producers were having a hard time. How do you deal with that? And how would you recommend customers other individuals getting into this business deal with that? Do they just need to go find a slaughterhouse and establish a rapport with them? And what do you find? Do you find that they want you to commit to bringing in so many animals? How does that work for you?
Well, so we only use one slaughter plant. We use them because the original, as I mentioned earlier, we were going to do a grocery store. So we use Shinoa Locker. That's one of our closest ones to us. And we use them because they have a USDA inspection, so we can have the USDA label on our product. And for your viewers out there, you can still use, so there's USDA inspected and it's state inspected slaughter plants. And the state one, you can still do farmers markets, but you're technically not able to sell in stores with a state stamp. So that's one reason why we've always stayed with Shinoa. Now, we've been very fortunate. We have not had the delays on lamb. Now, if you call them about beef, they say, oh, you're out, or pork, oh, yeah, we're 9 months out. But we've been very fortunate. We're taking lambs in about every 2 weeks, and we're getting about 6 to 8 head processed. Now, it takes about 2 weeks to get them processed, but we have not had the issues. But for your viewers, I would say find a locker plant, establish a relationship with them, and you kind of get a feel for, what's their interest, because some locker plants don't process lamb, or they don't have a lot of experience with it. So first I would, see if they want to do lamb. Now ours is just, they've done lamb for years. So it was kind of natural for them.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as feed stuff is concerned with your animals, some people want organic only. Some people want, everybody kind of has their specific things that they want. We personally haven't chased that too much, because you can kind of go down a rabbit hole, with tailoring to specific needs. But is that something you guys do? Do you do organic only? And that's a whole nother set of rules and inspections and things you have to go down for that as well, correct?
Yeah, so
if you want to be certified organic, is that a nightmare?
I don't know. We don't. Yeah,
we don't follow that. We just, as I tell everybody, we're just trying to find the best quality product. And to be honest, you'd have to eat a lot of meat to make any difference on if you were going to eat organic or natural. I said, nothing like a good old corn-fed lamb. And if anybody can really tell a difference, it might be if they're grass-fed, because they tend to be a little drier when you put them on the grill. And then you lose your...
Right.
So we don't really chase any of that as well. We're just trying to find, larger chops, and we try to concentrate on flavor and offer the best product that we can.
But our sheep are on hay and grass fed finish, and some corn, especially in the winter, they get
now
corn.
the only thing we haven't been chastening. Now, one thing that we've really tried to be careful with is when we first started doing this, I was mixing pork and lamb together into brats. Some people don't want pork or are allergic to pork, and so we quit doing that and just doing whole lamb brats. Well, now I didn't catch it initially because I didn't ask the question, but to get thicker and bigger brats, what do you think that they use to stuff? They use pork intestine,
pork fat,
and pork intestine.
Yeah.
So we've had to be very clear on that with our customers.
So I'm spoiled, and so what I'll do is I will out of a whole lamb. What I normally do is I'll debone and net the legs, and I get all the rest of it turned into like brats and burgers, and I haven't put pork fat in it, and that's the way I like it. People will eat our burgers and our brats, and they're like, what is this? This is so good. And I'm like, it's lamb. And people cannot believe it's something, and this is just my personal taste, something about adding just a little bit of pork fat to lamb for burgers or for brats. It is just fantastic. There's nothing quite like it. So in the back of my mind, and it's come up in the back of my mind a few times as this conversation has rolled along, and I'm thinking to myself, how do you manage the timing of it all? Because I'm thinking about what I've been dealing with, and I feel like we constantly chase the holidays. And as you guys are well aware, Ramadan runs on a lunar calendar, so that rolls back every year. And this year coming up, we're running into this unique situation where Ramadan and Greek Easter and Easter are all kind of bundled together. So when you say, hey, I'm taking in 6 or 8 animals every couple of weeks, how are you managing that? Like, how are you deciding like which ones you're taking in? How are you, so you said, I want a lamb one time a year and I want to really bundle it together. So how are you making all this work with timing?
Well,
she does all the work.
Well, this last year we've had like lambs in February and March, and then we also had some like later lambs in like April and May, and so that's like also helped. And then we've also had to go buy some lambs just because how much we've been going.
So
and selling for the farmers markets.
Our original plan always has been timing our lambing around Easter. I mean, obviously that's the best time of year, and I think if we can, I think we're going to continue doing this farmers market because I will tell you the interest in lamb is out there, and every farm. I don't go to everyone, but every time I go, there's always something. We can't find good lamb, and so we're probably going away from just concentrating on holidays only and build upon this farmers market. And so we're trying to go from, lambing that one time a year. We're going to keep those lambs and grow them out and keep those on hand as we need them for the farmers market. So, we're selling 2 or 3 lambs a week. And so we probably need to do a better job of having more lambs to start with. We didn't know what the interest was going to be when we started this farmers market. We didn't think we'd sell, we didn't think we'd sell a lamb a week. We thought maybe a lamb a month because we just didn't know what the interest was out there. And it's boggled our mind. So one, we didn't have enough lamb, period. We've gone.
That's why we bought a big group.
We bought a big group, so we're ready next year. But I've been going through my network of sheep friends, picking out, do you have any lambs yet? So I'm trying to find good ones first off, but that can be a challenge when you're in the off season of lambing. So we've talked and worked with about a dozen other guys around us within an hour or two, trying to fill the void. And we've probably bought, 20 to 30 lambs this summer. And we're probably going to buy a big group here going into the fall to get us through winter, in the holiday season. So, but our hope is going into next year, we'll be able to raise all of our own, and And we're just going to have to keep them around and grow them out slowly and have it so we don't have to buy as many. Because obviously you've seen the market on the lambs has gone up and down and all around summer.
Mm-hmm. Right. We saw a little bit of a dip here a couple of weeks ago, about the time Texas started cutting loose a lot of theirs when, the drought was hitting really hard and they kind of, I don't want to use the term dumped, but, we had a huge influx of lamb into the market. And prices went from $3 a pound live weight to $1 something a pound. And that kind of made my rear end pucker a little bit because I was like, oh, I haven't seen prices like this in a long time. And it's been so wild. People are just now, at least it seems that people are just now, it's starting to sink in. Monthly bills are starting to come in and people are starting to see power bills. They're starting to realize what they're spending on groceries. And to be honest with you, I think it's helping us a little bit. And I it may sound a little crazy, but see what you guys think about this. We've seen more people interested in buying meat off the farm now, buying our eggs, buying all these things, because they're like, hey, I'm going to spend $40 to take me and my 2 kids to McDonald's. Why am I going to do that when I can just buy I can buy meat and put it in my freezer and have better quality. People are paying more attention to the quality that they're getting. At least that's what I've been seeing. So
I fully concur with that. I mean, I think people are just a lot more cognizant of the fact of where it comes from and who is the farmer. And so, I mean, I never used to sell just a half a lamb or a quarter of a lamb. And I know we've had multiple requests here since COVID,
legs
and for legs and for half a lamb or a quarter of a lamb.
Mm-hmm.
And so I agree with that thought process totally.
Yeah, and as far as co-oping with other people, I think that's super important. You really have a good group of guys in your area, very experienced, reliable. Rick Adams comes to mind. Rick is now you can run into some problem. You can run into some problems with that. I work a lot with Jeff Hunter. Jeff is close by me. We had Erin Jennings by me, and he's since moved out. But it can be hard with the club lamb guys because I want something to sell for me, and they've got, rightly so, they've got some really nice lambs. And so I find that I run into 2, maybe 3 problems. First problem is I don't ever have enough lamb. My one customer that I told you that I deal with, I'll be damned, he called me this year and was like, hey man, I need a lamb. And I'm like, I don't have one. So I had to call Jeff, and I can tell you it's been more than once or twice that I've had to buy lamb off guys, and I made no money. But I was like, you know what? It's better for me to keep this customer and to do right by this customer than to turn them away. Because if I turn them away, they're going to find someone else, and then I'll lose that. And the other thing is I don't mind helping out these guys, that I work with. They help me out and I help them out. Jeff's called me before and said, hey, do you have a lamb? It's nice to have that network with people because it truly does seem to come back around. Call it karma or call it whatever you will. I think it's good for mental health sometimes just to help people out for no reason other than just to help them out. But the club lamb thing can hurt me because I just simply can't juggle the price difference between them. But do you have a number in mind? Where does this end? Like, at what point have you talked about that? Like, okay, how big can we get before this all falls apart? Or
yeah, I asked my wife, can you push 500 ewes yet? Every day. She's like, no.
I think
right.
This point, while the kids are little, I think we talked about being at that 80, 100 range.
Yeah, and probably just not much ahead of that. So we're hoping we'll get more lambs with the polypays and just kind of keep it small right now. If we grow above that, I just don't think we can handle it right now for the pasture that we have. And I mean, we're lucky enough that we're grain farmers, so we can get feed source pretty easy. But there's only so much my wife can do. I'm working the full-time job and away from it, So I 80 to 100 probably our safe bet right now. And we've been there, so we know what to expect.
Yeah.
How important is feed conversion? And I know when I think about feed conversion, I think, well, yeah, it's important. I want to get the most growth out of my animals as I can, based on the amount of feed that I pour into them. And I think people underestimate the importance of knowing how fast your animals are going to grow, because that helps you a lot to be able to schedule and to know what you're going to have and when you're going to have it. I guess my problem with some of the breeds that we've raised traditionally, some of the longer, taller, white-faced breeds, is that they grow slow. They grow big and tall first, and then they kind of want to fill out. And as I've actually been forced to kind of breed in some faster growing animals so I can hit my market weight better and faster. I've worked with Rick Adams helped me out a lot a few years ago. I went to Rick's farm and I said, Rick, I've got I need a meat wagon that I can breed onto my farm and get fast growing lambs. And I ideally wanted them to be at market weight, 60 to 70 pounds at weaning. What can you do? And I was fortunate, Rick gave me a buck. I think it was an Ile-de-France cross with, it was a Rick weird science experiment. He's got those around there, and it had all the curves of a chest freezer, and it fit the bill for me. So I guess my question is, for people that are getting started with this, how important is it for them to pay attention to growth characteristics of the lambs? And would you say it's better to start off with one breed specifically first to get a handle on it before they start mixing in other things? Or how would you tackle that for a newbie?
Good question. I would say, the feed efficiency is important. First, they need to have a breed that they're just comfortable with. Going back to what we talked about earlier, they got to be comfortable with handling them and all that. But, I guess going back to what we do, across, exactly what you just said, cross, if you're just going to sell them for the meat in the farmer's market, crossing them up to get that hybrid vigor and that growth is probably the best thing you can do. So that's why we're going to do the Dorper Polypay cross. I've had Dorper crosses before, and they just grow super fast. They stay healthy, they're hardy, and they get bigger and fatter sooner. So feed efficiency is important, and but you just got to be comfortable with whatever that cross is that you want to make, and the breeds you use. Because some people,
when you're breeding the Dorpers in, what do you find as far as their breed characteristics? So here a couple years ago, we started breeding in Southdown because I was lacking. I was ignorant to Dorpers. I just didn't really know a lot about them. In our area, you just didn't really see a lot, and I needed more hind end in my flock. And so I went to Erin Jennings and I said, hey, I need a large commercial buck that I can throw on my ewes, and I need longer loin, and I need bigger legs. And so again, he gave me between the overall size and front shoulders that I got out of Rick Adams, and then width and then length and hind saddle that I got out of Erin, I was able to really put something nice together. But I noticed, I did not know this about Southdowns, was that I was a learning curve for me with feeding them, because I was thinking, well, I'm going to feed them the same way I've always fed my Dorsets and everything else. And they would grow like hell, and they would get up to a certain weight, and then it was like they would stop growing and just put on fat like crazy. What do you see with Dorpers? How would you describe what do they do to the wool breeds? Do you run into that too? They grow real fast up to a certain weight, and then they kind of do some weird stuff on you, or what are you seeing?
I would agree with that assessment. It's very similar to the Southdowns. I would say with the Dorper, we've tried to do bigger framed polypays, because the Dorper will automatically make the frame of the lamb smaller. So where, you know, the Columbias, they're going to finish out at 150, 140, 150 pounds. These Dorpers by themselves probably finish out at 80 to 100. And these crosses are in that probably that 100 to 120 range, which I think is, for consistency's sake, a perfect size when we're slaughtering or when we're marketing our animals. And so moderation. And then, we go back to the crossing of the hybrid vigor. I just have been so happy with how healthy the lambs are. And with Dorpers, you don't want to feed them a lot of grain. Mm-mm. They just grow off of hay, which to me is amazing, because having you probably fully understand having Dorsets, but having Columbias, you can feed them 5-gallon buckets of grain and they'll get tall and big, but they don't put on any muscle or any finish. And these lambs will be fully finished at 115 pounds. And it just amazes me. And they're like little brick tanks when they're finished. And so, the finishing aspect and the healthiness and the vigor and using maybe just a little bit less grain, which obviously today with $7 corn here locally, that's pretty important.
So how are you feeding your lambs? So on our farm, we offer free choice. We offer free choice creep up through weaning. Are you doing similar to that, or have you changed with the Dorpers? Has that forced you to change a little bit?
Well, the Dorpers, yes, because had a big learning curve with the Dorpers. You can't push grain on them like you can the polypays or straight poly. The Dorper crosses are fine, but if you have the straight Dorpers, you can't push corn on the females. Now you can push them maybe on the males, but on the females, you'll blow them up, for lack of better word.
Okay.
So we do
just get too much fat cover.
Yeah, well, too much fat cover, or they'll just blow the back end out.
Right. You'll start seeing prolapse and things like that with them as well.
We do free choice hay, and then we've really backed off on the grain. Now we'll split up. We're maybe a little bit not more advanced, but lucky enough we can break them up into groups and feed them accordingly. Where we got some lighter ones, we'll feed them heavier grain, and the ones that are getting closer, we'll just back off the grain quite a bit and just do straight hay or alfalfa. Well, that's amazing about the Dorpers. I mean, I just sorted through ewes here 2 weeks ago when we changed pastures, and I flipped over several of those ewes just to check their feet, and I was just amazed at how gobby fat the Dorpers were on our dried up, nothing out there grass. And I'm just like, I'm used to Columbias. There is no fat on a Columbia.
Right. So one more question, and then we'll start wrapping it up here. But I told you it goes quick. So we're at 53 minutes. It's amazing, how fast it goes. So financially, I've always told people that you need to keep your money separated. As far as if you're going to be selling animals for meat or whatever, do you kind of go along with that? Do you think, I always tell people, get your start an LLC, start something like that, get a checking account for that business, treat it separately. Do you think that that's important? Do you think that that's not so important?
Well, the banker coming out in me, which is my full-time job, said completely, I don't think you have to do the LLC as long as you have appropriate insurance.
Okay.
But definitely from the beginning, Erin can contest this. I keep it separate. That way you can really track how you're doing. And we've really played with that too ourselves.
Personal and separate than farming. So we have 2 separate accounts for that. So
and then,
right.
We've kind of kept the tracking of the farmer's market separate from the grain farm, so we can kind of tell. And then we've kind of set ourselves goals of, how much do we pull out for just our personal consumption out of the farmer's market, and what goes back to pay bills on, like paying for the group of sheep or paying for the 4 new round bale feeders that we got. And so we, the banker coming at me, we have spreadsheets that we created to track, what product are we selling the best? Are we selling it for enough?
Right.
And so I think you do agree with you, keep it separate so you can track these things because you might be surprised at what is doing the best, or you can find out some seasonality to stuff.
Sure. Yeah, and the scientist in me, I do a lot of numbers myself. I'll sit down and graph out. I graphed out 4 years worth of sale barn prices a couple weeks ago, and I don't think you can go wrong with getting information. And I say this on every single interview and video and live stream and everything we do is that the better consumer you are of information that's out there, the more power you have and the more it's going to help you out. And it's amazing the trends that you can find when you get information in front of you in an easy to read format, and you can just kind of take a 30,000 foot view of it and say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that, these trends occurred, or so on and so forth. With that being said, I lied. I do have another question for you, which is a big one that I'm sure people are going to want to know. How do you determine prices? How do these people know? Because especially when you're getting started, and I think you guys you may not have suffered from this, but you can at least appreciate it, is a lot of these people, I think they underprice their product because they feel like if they're afraid to ask for the sale. A lot of these people aren't business people, and they're afraid to ask for the sale. They're afraid if they price their product too high, they're not going to get any customers. And so we see people sometimes that give away, I don't want to say they give away, but they give away livestock. And I'm like, why are you doing that? So what would your advice be for setting prices on products?
It's a learning process.
It is learning. So yeah, well, this is our first year doing the farmers markets, and so we are learning how to price it. We probably are a little underpriced right now, but
so like when our first weekend at our main farmers market, I remember there was a guy just selling ground lamb only, and he was selling, and they parked our location right across from him, which I don't think it was very smart. They did move us the very next week, but we were selling ground lamb for $8 a pound, and he was $6 at that time, which was dirt cheap. But it was our first time.
Right.
We didn't know any better.
We didn't know.
And the guy right across from us is selling for $15 a pound. He was not very happy that we were doing that, and he made it pretty clear. But you just kind of going back to the numbers. You kind of have, what I started with was figure out just kind of rough costs of what's it take? What can you get for that lamb? Let's say, 120 pound lamb, you get $200 or $225 at market. Obviously, if you're doing a farmer's market, you want a premium. So you need to mark that up a little bit. But you also need to take into account, Erin's spending a lot of time. So you need to take that into a little bit of account. I think a lot of farmers don't, because I grew up with, I have all this free time. I'm not going to charge myself anything, is what my father's mentality is, because he's like, I have all the time in the world. But you need to put a value to that. And then I tried to pencil, what's the mileage to the locker plant back and forth? What's a little bit of wear and tear on, we have a skid steer, we have a tractor, we have a pickup and a trailer. I mean, that all is stuff that takes a long time to depreciate out, but you need to take that into account. And so I don't think there's any one perfect method, but when we were pricing, we took that into account, but we also probably started lower because, one, we were afraid to ask a lot, like you said, but we also wanted to get our product out there first. And we've increased prices a little bit now, and we're selling more than ever. So, I think you got to take into account your audience, because we go to 3 different farmers markets. You got to be careful how you do it, but I know the one, we probably could double our prices and still sell the same, but the other 2 markets, you would probably sell nothing if you doubled your prices. So
right. And I've always told my kids, I've always said, we can make a little bit of money off somebody for a lifetime, or we can make a lot of money off somebody once. And so you have to find that happy medium of, you got to make your money, but you got to take care of your customers as well. And people will know if you burn somebody, they'll find out that you burned them and they won't come back. And so you got to be cautious with that.
One thing that we always say is, would we buy this product? If we were to go into the store, or we were going to the farmer's market, I don't think I would ever buy a ground lamb for $15 a pound. No heckin' way.
Right.
But we sell ours for $8 to $9 a pound, which to us, if you sold a 100-pound lamb and you got 50 pounds of ground lamb off it, that's pretty good money. I mean, there's no way you could get that just taking it to the market. And so, you just got to find where your happy medium is there and look at what other people are doing. We did a lot of that, calling people and looking at Facebook, and that's kind of where we build our prices.
Googling like other prices and seeing what like other people.
Do you guys track anything online? Do you pay much attention to sale barn prices, USDA prices, things like that?
Yeah, so we don't like physically have a spreadsheet, but I always use Kelowna, Iowa. They're the big time sheep thing to the west, and they're like, and Arthur is the other sheep one. So I kind of just track those two to see what live prices are doing. We haven't been selling as many live lambs compared to the product lately because, we can gross almost twice as much on the product, the individual products, as a live lamb. So it's hard to let go of a lamb when we know we're going to need it. And so I've told people, I said, we're going to be higher than the guy down the road because we have to have the product. So, and most people, as you say, I guess you can't be afraid to charge a little bit more because if they like it, they're going to come back. If they're not, there's more people out there.
Right. All right. Well, this was really good. And I could talk to you guys for a few more hours. I'd like to come out sometime and when you're actually at a farmer's market and maybe without causing too much disruption, maybe kind of follow you around and go through the process with you. I think that's important for people to, sometimes I think people want to do something and then they don't think of the little things. They don't think of when we're having a sale barn day, that starts the day before. We're figuring out who's going to go. We got to load them up on the trailer. We got to get everything in order. And then, of course, kids nowadays, they've got all kinds of things going on. You've got work. It's a process. How early are you comfortable with getting up in the morning? How much do you like dealing with people? I have I deal with people all day, every day. So I'm good at that. You guys, you're people, people oriented, you can tell. But boy, if you don't like people, the sale barn might be the right place for you. So I think that's important as well. So I definitely like to touch base with you guys and kind of maybe follow you for an afternoon and do a little bit more. So in the description of the video below, we're going to have some contact information for you guys in case anyone wants to contact you. Do you guys do any kind of workshops or anything? Have you thought about offering anything to people that are looking to get into this?
We have not yet, but we've been talking about doing an event maybe in the near future, more event-oriented than a workshop.
Sure.
We're open. We've had people come and look and see what we do here, and so we're always welcome to answer any questions or give a tour here so people can look and see what we do.
Right.
We're always learning too, so we're always willing to help.
So I'm Tim from Linessa Farms Specialty and Heirloom Livestock with Chris and Erin Crider. Thanks again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.